The most expensive Pokemon game in the entire franchise has no gameplay, and that's mostly not hyperbole. So what is the most expensive game in the Pokemon franchise? I'm not talking about perfectly sealed collector's editions or mint condition top mark graded frickin' auction house nonsense. I'm talking about games people are reselling online that are in some shape or form used, and that game by a large margin is the GameCube title Pokemon Box Ruby and Sapphire. How much of a large margin are we talking about here? Well, the closest Pokemon games off the top of my head that could go for a significant amount of money are things like a loose copy of Pokemon Emerald for around $100 US, a brand new pre-ordered copy of the Scarlet and Violet double pack for $120, or a complete in-box copy of Pokemon XD Gale of Darkness for around $200. What's the difference in value between these two games? Try over $1,500 US. What's especially strange about the whole scenario is that you can actually pick up a copy of the Japanese version of the game for less money than you'd spend in a single sitting of a Steam summer sale. I even have a copy of it myself. Specialized memory card and adverts included. So why is there such a stark difference in price? Well, for starters, Pokemon Box isn't alone in being a cheap buy in its Japanese version. Most GameCube games can be bought and played for a very cheap price as long as you have a Japanese GameCube and can, of course, read and understand Japanese. Pokemon Box was released in Japan in 2003 for the low price of 2,000 yen for the link cableless version, or 2,800 yen with the link cable included. Attributing the yen to USD rate back in 2003, that's $14.50 and $20.30 respectively. Even now, given how importers have done a significant amount of legwork for the average state's consumer, you can pick up a copy of the Japanese version for literally 25 bucks. So what the heck? Why does the US version cost more than my rent? It's a pretty easy question to answer actually, and it all comes down to distribution. Japan saw Pokemon Box as their standard fluff add-on to truly die-hard Pokemon fans, and as such simply released it as one does any other game. However, in the States, the only way to ever obtain a copy of Pokemon Box Ruby and Sapphire was to either physically buy it from the Pokemon Center store located in Rockefeller Center, New York, or purchase it online directly from the Pokemon Center website. One cannot do this now, since it's been over 18 years since the fact, and Nintendo has no idea the amount of money it could make by simply having a re-release event that no doubt would shatter the wills of any eBay sellers trying to cash in on those sweet scalping bucks. Okay, maybe it's not right to actually call it scalping since it's genuinely a very difficult item to find. For some reason, between both the PAL version, which is infinitely cheaper by the way, and US versions, only about 10,000 copies in the English language were ever sold. That means if you happen to own an English copy, you'd be one of the 0.000128982% of the population that owns a copy of this game? So what exactly is the point of Pokemon Box? Well, for those familiar with the Pokemon Bank 3DS software and more recently the Pokemon Home app and Switch software, you're probably already up to speed on Pokemon Box. It's the precursor building blocks that these two softwares stem from, only Pokemon Box has a few more nifty features that make it, let's say unique. Pokemon Box Ruby and Sapphire is a storage system that allows mass Pokemon storage between any and all standard mainline Pokemon games for the Game Boy Advance. Although the back of the box only ever specifically states that you can use Pokemon Ruby and Sapphire versions, I've tested it myself and found that at least the storage aspect of the game works with Pokemon Emerald, Leafgreen, and Firered versions as well. But I'm getting ahead of myself. To even play Pokemon Box, you're going to need a GameCube, a copy of a Game Boy Advance, a Game Boy Advance link cable, and a copy of one of the aforementioned Game Boy Advance Pokemon games, as well as a pair of working hands. Yes, this is my copy of Pokemon Box Ruby and Sapphire. Yes, I own one, and that makes me cooler than you. No, you can't touch it. Take it all in, baby. This is a once-in-a-lifetime experience. I thought I'd be happier. We've got two choices on the main title screen, and both require us to have a Game Boy that has a Pokemon game with a save file currently on it connected to the Player 2 slot. Our save file must also be saved currently inside of the Pokemon Center, which is probably due to the game tricking the save file into thinking we're trading our Pokemon away. That's, of course, pure conjecture, and I welcome any Pokemon fans more diehard than myself to correct me in the comments. We'll start with the go-to Pokemon Box option since that's where the meat of the game is. Once we've connected our Game Boy to our GameCube and turned it on, Pokemon Box reads our save file and introduces us to a girl by the name of Bridget. This is the older sister of Laynette, who, alongside Bill, is the creator of the Pokemon storage system that we all know and love. Pokemon Box is an extension of that system, meant to really increase the scope and reach that the original system seems to be lacking stacking. What that essentially boils down to is individual boxes are now 12 by 5 instead of 6 by 5, meaning each box holds 60 Pokemon instead of 30. You can also grab and move Pokemon en masse, so when you're playing Legends Arceus and going ham moving Pokemon from one field to another, you actually have Pokemon Box to thank for that feature. I'm not really sure how that lines up timeline-wise, but there you go. There's also a staggering 25 boxes to use, meaning that in total, you can store 1,500 Pokemon on the memory card that you receive alongside the game. And that also raises an even more incredible revelation. Theoretically, you can store infinite Pokemon as long as you have enough GameCube memory cards. The Pokemon Box save file takes 59 blocks, so most of the time it fills up any basic memory card you use. But if you just really love Pokemon and can't stand the thought of giving any of them up, then you don't have to. Catch them all, every single one. Do not stop until every Pokemon is safely stored inside of Bridget's computer. Do it. You won't. Anytime you connect one of your Game Boy Pokemon games to Pokemon Box, Bridget gifts you an egg to start off your relationship and help fill out the exhaustive amount of storage slots you'll be working with. This isn't a random Pokemon either and is consistent across every game the first time that you connect to Pokemon Box. Inside the egg is a Swablu, and while that initially may seem a little underwhelming considering that Swablu aren't exactly in short supply in Ruby, Sapphire, and Emerald, take note that it also starts with False Swipe. Swablu cannot learn False Swipe. Sure, it's not the most groundbreaking of things to start out with, but imagine starting out your Ruby or Sapphire playthrough with this thing. You're no longer forced to use Wingull or Tailo early game, and maybe, just maybe, a Sing and False Swipe Swablu can be a huge help to nab some more difficult wild Pokemon for beginner players. And this isn't the only egg that you can receive. If you fulfill some special requirements, there's 3 more consistent eggs that you can actually obtain. If you deposit 100 Pokemon into Pokemon Box, you get a Zigzagoon that knows freaking extreme speed. If you deposit 500 Pokemon, you get a Skitty that knows Payday. Let's forget that one exists. And finally, if you max out the storage and deposit a whopping 1,499 Pokemon, you get a Pichu. What's special about this Pichu? It knows Surf. Yes, the surfing Pikachu legend lives on in Pokemon Box. What's even crazier about this Pichu knowing Surf is if by some miracle you both fill up the storage system in Pokemon Box and also beat the story mode in either Pokemon Collosseum or Pokemon XD Gale of Darkness and have the mental wherewithal and godlike based energy to want to trade your surfing Pichu over to one of those 2 games, they actually programmed a surfing animation for not only Pichu, but Pikachu and Raichu as well. It's all connected, baby! So is that all then? Is this game just a storage system? Kind of. There's also this really strange system where you can show off your Pokemon collection in the form of showcases. It's really weird. The closest thing I can compare it to is the trophy view function in Super Smash Bros. Melee. It serves almost no purpose other than to show off your collection in a really specific setting. You can get pretty creative with it with different themes, stands, and even renditions of iconic Gen 3 background music. Honestly, I would love to see this come back in Pokemon Home, since now that we're in the golden age of internet connectivity, other people could actually see your collection and all the effort that you went through to arrange them in neat ways. Like you're 5 years old again and you got your little Pokemon action figures. Look at them go! On the topic of other things besides the storage system, the second option in the main menu is the Go to Adventure mode. This allows you to play your Ruby or Sapphire game on the big screen. I say those 2 titles specifically since although you can connect to the storage system with Firered, Leafgreen, and Emerald 2, they, for some reason, are unable to be played in Adventure mode. While playing, you can, get this, take a single screenshot while playing and add different filters to it. This screenshot can then be used as a wallpaper for boxes in your Pokemon Box. The filters suck, mostly. What purpose does this serve? Why only one? Who made this? The funniest thing about this emulation, I think is what this would be considered, is the fact that 2 months prior in Japan and a staggering 11 months prior in the US, an add-on for the GameCube known as the Game Boy Player was released to the general audience that allowed any and all Game Boys to be played on the big screen. So, you could either buy Pokemon Box Ruby and Sapphire to emulate 2 of your handheld collection on your television, or just buy the Game Boy Player for your GameCube and enjoy not only all 1,538 Game Boy Advance games, but all 1,046 Game Boy games and all 917 Game Boy Color games, as long as you actually own them, of course. Some games even got a special Rumble feature added in, like Pokemon Pinball Ruby and Sapphire and Mario and Luigi Superstar Saga. Dude, you could even remap controllers, change the size of the window, change the Game Boy border to several ugly variants, and even take advantage of crazy things like using a Game Boy as a controller, using your GameCube to read e-reader cards if you have an e-reader, connects your Game Boy to your GameCube with wireless adapters or link cables, and even set timers for when your mommy told you to go to bed so you don't get in trouble. So does the rarest Pokemon game have no gameplay? It depends on your definition of gameplay, but it certainly seems so. With all that said, would I have recommended this to Pokemon fans back in the day when it came out? Probably yes. It's not exactly revolutionary, and not at all necessary to the main line of Pokemon games. One of the great features that Pokemon Box offers is the ability to mass trade many Pokemon at a time without the tedium of doing things one at a time. I'm sure a great many kid remembers getting their sibling together to catch a bunch of wild, low-level Pokemon, sit through the saving screen at the Pokemon Center, and having to watch the swap animation 6 times in a row, and repeat ad nauseum until your cartridge was emptied of important Pokemon so you could erase your save with your conscience clear. There are a few problems with that though, since you cannot trade your Pokemon to a new Pokemon cartridge until you've completed the Sevi Isles, Ruby and Sapphire side quest in Firered and Leafgreen, so way after endgame, have been registered in the Hall of Fame, have 100 different Pokemon entries, and receive the National Pokédex in Emerald, so about endgame, or simply have 100 Pokédex entries in the case of Ruby and Sapphire. Why these restrictions exist, I have no clue, but it makes the idea of wanting to take your ace team from one game to another a pipe dream at best. Kinda disappointing. With the foresight that this became a collector's item, if anyone nabbed this up when it was in its public release, that person's Chad. If you're a dum-dum like me and wanted to honor the dream of you from over 15 years ago by buying this at the most expensive it's ever been in its history, well, I couldn't have done it without my lovely patrons. This video was made possible by support from some of the coolest people around. A huge thank you to Michaela Savage, ATK4May, Gideon King, Chris Schmidt, and Will Oldham for believing in me and my work, and letting a nearly 30-year-old loser give his younger self the game he wanted all those years ago. If you'd like to become a patron and see all of the diverse content that I produce here on the TheSassJacket a day early, as well as having your name mentioned in each video I do, and a small bevy of other little perks, head on over to my Patreon and become a patron. Every donation helps me create more content like this and moves me ever forward to being able to do this gig full time. Help me get there. I would be ever so grateful. If you can't spare any change, then even a like or a comment can do wonders to get videos like this into YouTube's algorithm. Let me know what kind of Pokemon game you'd like for me to talk about next. Oh, and also subscribe. I would love you so much. See you next time.